Hello again, Bots and Bits fans, welcome back. Today I'm taking you through something a little bit different. It is MP10U, old versus new. These are both made by the company Collection Kingdom, who makes all of the MP10 knockoffs and their trailers. This one, however, was made maybe 5 years ago, 6 years ago. It's going back a while, and this is their version 2KO. Now, if you don't know what that is, Collection Kingdom released an MP10 version 1, obviously, and it had massive gaps in the forearms. You couldn't close the chest. It was a colossal floppy mess. The thing was a waste, and they lost a lot on it, which forced them to correct it and release a version 2. Now, the chest doesn't close all the way. These wrists are better, but it was still a bit of a floppy mess. And even, look at that arm, even the arm floppy. But there was no other option. There was no other way to get an MP10 Ultra Magnus except paint one yourself. And also, Collection Kingdom simply just did not make very many of them. So it became quite a scarce piece quickly. Now, a few years later, a lot of people have been asking and they've been looking. Collection Kingdom have popped up all of a sudden with another one. Unfortunately, they haven't put too much effort into the box, but we do still get a lot of these same accessories. And speaking of accessories, here they are. Now, old on the right, new on the left, and straight away you can see that there are a lot of color differences going on here. To start with, the energy axes. The new axe is a green color, whereas the old one is a really nice looking blue. There we go. Now the green, while it is done okay, it does have swirls and rough patches. It's not done to a particularly high standard. I don't think anyone is really too fussed about this. Do any of you guys even use these? I don't. I've never used it. I think it looks bloody awful. But this is not done particularly well. Whereas the old one was much clearer, much crisper. And while it still does have the mark there, it's quite difficult to see. So much better on the old. Then we just go with the Matrix. Now, this Matrix has seen better days. It's never been in his chest, never been out of the box, nothing, but still, just a bit of box rattle, and it's lost a lot of the copper around the edges. It seems really fragile. And the blue from inside of it has gone as well, which isn't too great. That hasn't stood the test of time. It looks pretty rubbish. But then we look at the new one. Hang on. And they've gone for a much different color. They've gone for the gold instead of this weird copper. The colors overall are a lot better. And of course, the center of the Matrix is a really nice deep blue instead of this sort of almost clear. Yeah, so the new Matrix looks good. Then his old and new cannons, they are almost identical. You know, same silvers, same black plastic, and the handles are black plastic painted white. And it's not a very good paint. So a couple of transformations of the gun, and there's chips on that hinge, chips in there on the new one. So the paint quality on the handle is consistent, and it does transform as it's intended for rear storage like that. And the old one, while doesn't always want to hold in, it will most of the time. See, so no real differences between the old and new gun. Also, the old MP10U comes with instructions and a bio card, and they even put their correct name in it on the old one. And both the Matrixes, they both sit in the chest okay. The old one doesn't seem to sit as far back, so closing this section, you can see that it's not closing flush. So the cab area here is really split with the Matrix inside, whereas the new version sits mostly flush. It's still sticking out a little bit, and then closing the cab section, you only have a slightly exaggerated gap compared to this pretty much still open look. But even after I've removed the Matrix from both chests, they still have a very similar gap in the cab section anyway. Now this character doesn't have a lot of paint to its name, but what it does have is breathtaking eyes. Look at that. Look at that red in those eyes. That is just beautiful. Now the new version, the red is a lot darker than the previous version, which was more of a copper orange, and you can see it doesn't look quite as vibrant as the new version. Still have a silver face with blue mouth plate and the blue forehead, and they do still have silver in the ears. My old version was done really, really poorly, the ears that is, whereas the current version is very neat indeed. Moving down, we have the cab area. Now, on the new version, it has a sort of purple tint to it. It's much more noticeable in person than it is on camera. But then the previous version, it still has the purple tint, but even in hand, you can barely see it. You've got to have it under the right lights. Another difference that you'll notice at this level, previously, Collection Kingdom would have deep set Autobot logos, as you can see, just like regular MP10. But since Collection Kingdom have started doing the Bape line mostly, they now do not have that shoulder piece. So on the new version, it is just a Autobot logo glued on. Now, other differences are the green colors. They see the clear plastic in the crutch plate area here is very, very transparent. Hang on, focus there. There we go. It is very transparent. Whereas on the previous version, it was more of an aqua. It was a more deeper green. You can still see the detail under it, but there was no mistake that this was all just one color sort of thing. Does that make sense? Whereas over here, you can see the silver coming up through it. It's much clearer. Also, you'll see that the painted sections of the forearms are slightly different. This has more of a metallic reflection to it, whereas this, the old version, is a more deeper green. Personally, I prefer the deeper colors of the previous version over this new, more clearer metallic color. The new version, silver on the legs, is done pretty well. When you compare it to the previous version, this paint seemed very thick and chipped easily and filled in a lot of detail. It gave a lot of soft edging to a lot of those square bits. Whereas the new version, much crisper, much sharper, probably thinner, but it does look better. And the same can be said for inside the legs. So the detail in here, the silver is still much thinner and looks better, but the previous version was a much better color. And actually that detail up there looks a bit better. Just in here, what does it look like? Yeah, I don't know. You be the judge. And then lastly for paint, we have the die-cast feet. Now it's a little bit hit and miss because they've been sprayed and you can see the dark color coming up from underneath, especially up around these sections here. On the previous version, the green is done pretty well, but on this side it's a lot more fuzzy. Actually, not that foot, but that foot. I'm not sure if you're getting this on camera, but the white here where it meets this straight piece of detail is very fuzzy just in there. Hang on. This section just in here is all very fuzzy. There's a lot of black coming up under that. With the exception of that fuzziness, overall the paint on these feet, on the die-cast bits, is done, reasonably well. Now, while there wasn't any fuzziness on the old version, they did spray it on too thick. See this detail just here? As you can see, the paint's gone on too thick and it started to pool and become lumpy, especially down in this section here. Started to fill in a lot of the detail. Paint was too thick and they sprayed it too close, too much of it. Alright, paint out of the way, we'll get onto plastic and joints. Now this plastic here has a much more solid white color to it. It looks and feels thicker and more sturdy, like the plastic itself. Whereas when you look at this one, plastic looks like milk mixed with water, whereas this just looks like full cream milk. And like full cream milk, some of these pieces have started to go a little bit yellow, like the plastic just in here on the back. It's all starting to lose its whiteness. It's not really coming up very well on camera because of my lights, but there is like a lot of the small joints and the back of the forearm here, in here, that's all starting to yellow a little bit. This one is very floppy. It is an old figure, but it hasn't seen much sunlight. It's been in a box for a long time, and still it's yellowing. Will the new version do it? I don't know. The plastic doesn't seem as good as the old version, but you never know. One detail I forgot to mention on plastic when it comes to the head is my new version arrived with a crack in the eyebrow of all places. There it is. No idea how that would have happened. It's not meant to look like that, but it does. Now onto articulation and joints and stuff. I'm not going to cover the old version too much because he is just a floppy mess. The ankles are tight, but the legs, the knees, the hinges, what else? The elbows, and I've tightened the screws in these. The elbows, the wrist swivel is fine. I've got crazy wobble just in there, look. And this hinge here for the head, I don't know what's going on with that, but that is just loose as. So overall, joints on him, not great at all. Joints on this one, few similarities with the old version. One that I'll just point out now is the same arm has the same looseness right there. Another problem, the head, it's not, look, it's not screwed in all the way. Let's just get up and have a good look at what I'm talking about. As you can see, it's not completed, it's not all the way in, and neither is the neck. So while the swivel is still reasonably tight, the head itself is not. That's really floppy, and most of the time he just looks down. And again, the panel that his head sits on, super loose. Not good. I'm not sure how you'd go about tightening that. When it comes to the head, you can just unscrew it and force it in. See, it still wants to pop back out again if I'm putting a bit of pressure on it. The head on my Magnus just kept getting more and more floppy. And I tightened the screw and I tightened it, and I couldn't figure out what the hell was going on with this thing until I pulled it apart and noticed something. See these little plugs on the inside of the ears? They are too fat for that hole. So when you put it on, just see if we can zoom in and get a really good look. It is the plug, this bit, is too big and it's not sitting all the way in. So you put it on there and there's still like a good, see that 1/4 of a millimeter gap still in that round, still in this round section, which is causing the head not to close all the way. So look, without the ears, put the head on, perfect, right? Everything lines up, everything fits. But if we put the ear back in, which side? This side. So put the ear in and chuck this backing piece on. See, now it won't collapse fully because that ear is not fitting inside the head properly. So two solutions to that. We can either trim the plug a little bit or make this hole a little bit wider. Just note that if you do make those alterations, only do little bits at a time and then keep checking it, because you might end up with super loose ears. So I have my trusty needle file here and I'm just going to try and widen that gap just a little bit. Much better. Once I screw that in, I reckon that'll hold in quite well. Before, it wouldn't even collapse. Now, it'll go most of the way in. Just got to do the other side and see how we go. Oh my god. So while trying to tighten this screw, the head has snapped off of the screw. See that? That's the head of the screw. So I guess that's it. Head's a little bit stiffer, I guess. A little bit. Too bad if it's not. Well, that did it. That got it loose. I managed to... having a little tantrum and throwing it has at least managed to get the head back apart again. So now I've just got to get some pliers, get that screw out and find a replacement. Alright, so I raided my junk box and I found a couple more screws that hopefully they'll fit. Okay, this head's back on. The up and down isn't too, it's still floppy, but a second ago you couldn't even look up. Not sure if you caught that bit or not. and the ears are a little bit looser, but they're not getting stuck. Some success. Worth all the trouble I put in? Definitely not. If you can live with it being floppy, live with it. I wouldn't bother, really. I wish I hadn't bothered. This was a colossal pain in the ass. Apart from that, this is quite strong all the way around. That swivel is good. The elbow is super stiff. The wrist swivel is even stiffer. And this section is stiff as well and tabbed in well. That is not, geez, that is really stiff. The butterfly here is fine. Now I can't get these to go down, and I don't want to force it too much. It's not really that important, I guess, but the smokestacks do not want to collapse. Alright, other arm is exactly the same in consistency, even with that super stiff elbow and the super stiff wrist and the super stiff transformation hinge, tabbed in perfectly well, isn't coming out. There's the waist swivel, which is very, very stiff again. The hip movement out is super squeaky and very tight. Listen to this. Oh my god. And on the other side as well. You do get a lot of tightness for your squeak, but that is a concerning noise. Hip ratchet forward works well and sounds nice and tight. Not going anywhere on that side. On this side, not too bad at all. And back. Yeah, it's not. Back doesn't really want to hold it. What about that side? Yeah, other side holds much better. When it comes to the knees, let's see. Yeah, not too bad. Not too bad. Will hold a pose, I would say. And then down to the feet. Now this side, fine. The ankle pivot, nice and stiff. Toe, nice and stiff. Forward, back, nice and stiff. Heel spur, very stiff. This side, not so much. Look at that. Super floppy. Toe is still stiff. Heel spur is still stiff. Forward and back is still stiff. Just pivot. Now it is a simple fix, but the screw is hidden behind all of this detail, so you do have to disassemble the entire leg to access that screw. Pain in the ass, but totally doable. Alright, on to vehicle mode, and I'm not going to bother with the transformation. It's the same as every other MP10. We know how to do it, and if you don't, there's a million videos on how to, so enjoy them. I will just say one thing about his transformation. Like my other Collection Kingdom bots, my Shattered Glass and my Ava, when collapsing the legs, it is just a colossal pain in the ass. It just does not want to let go easily. Once the thigh is inside, that is just, see, oh, that is really stiff. I'm worried about doing damage pulling it out. And, see, it just does, there we go. And the other side is pretty much this. That's a little bit easier, but pulling it back out again, Jesus. And you want to be careful with that. On my Ava, I forced it up, and what it did was it made the thigh come up like this, and it's cracked and broken all of this section here. That was a real why does that come out again? That's not very secure. Jesus. Yeah, it was a real disappointment smashing this whole section. On my other bots, I've disassembled the legs, I've lubed all the rails, I've checked everything. Everything works fine until I tighten the screws, and then it just doesn't work. And if you loosen the screws too much, then the switch here doesn't work either. I'm really at a loss on how to fix the other two. This one at least does go up. You just really hold this thigh, give a lot of pressure on this thigh so it does not move at all, and then just give it a wiggle, slide that up. That is so tight, because like I said, you do not want to smash this section here when the knee gives out and it goes like, you know, be careful is the point I'm trying to make. And there he is in vehicle mode, and you know, looks good. So yeah, overall it's a nice white tidy truck, rolls just fine, no dramas there. Everything tabbed in together pretty well, with the exception of that, and I'm finding the fuel tanks. They just sort of sit there. So it's not really tabbing in, it's just sitting in that tab hole. So it will line up. Once you move it around a bit, you can see it's starting to come out. This side's sitting in fine, just the other side has a bit of an issue. Alright, so that final question, is it worth it and should you buy it? Well, mine, yeah, I wouldn't recommend buying mine. Mine had a couple of issues that probably aren't indicative of the entire line, but I do have a lot of problems with it that are very common of Collection Kingdom. The version 2 MP10, that golden goose that was really cheap and higher quality than Takara, that doesn't exist anymore. This is their bait model where they've sort of cut a few corners, got the manufacturing price down, but based on their version 2 popularity have increased the retail price a little bit, and it hasn't really paid off. The price on this is a little bit higher. I think it's anywhere from $100 to $120 just for the bot. I'm seeing $160, $170 Australian dollars with the trailer. The trailer looks awful, so I didn't bother with it. Even though I have 2 versions, I just didn't care for the trailer one bit. I think the timing of this release leads me to believe that they may be preparing a MP10 711 KO. It wouldn't take them much to convert the MP10U into that, so we'll wait and see what they have in store. But anyway, if you're after an MP10 Ultra Magnus, there's no other way to get one. This is it, so you got no choice. If you've bought other Collection Kingdom KOs previously, I'm talking MP10 Ava, MP10 Shattered Glass, Green Bait, Red Bait, you know what you're getting. I think mine was particularly bad, but generally overall, they have similar issues. So if you have any of the other ones, or you've handled them, or watched the videos, or read the reviews, or whatever, you're gonna have a pretty clear idea in your mind of what this will be like when it arrives at your doorstep. And that's all I've got for you. If you have any comments, questions, love, or corrections, please leave them below. If you enjoyed my video and you like what I'm doing, please like and subscribe to my channel. Remember to check out my Facebook page for daily updates on third-party and KO news. And as always guys, thank you very much for your time, and thanks for watching.